everybody out there. Welcome to Mike Lead Aspire session this Friday before Thanksgiving. This is our last session of the year, but last but not least, we have Jeff Sass from Adobe, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But if you're out there watching us, please like and subscribe to our channel. If you're here at live, please make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. We do these sessions twice monthly, and just bring individuals from the community to come in and talk about what they do. So I am going to let Jeff introduce himself, but I'm going to ask a question and then you will go into that introduction. So the question, of course, is tell us your origin story.
It's great. Well, thanks for having me. Super excited to be here. So thanks again, Renee. Um, so I am one of the very few people who in tech goes to the same company and has stayed there for 26 years. So I came right out of graduate school and came to Adobe as one of what they call new college graduates. So I knew someone who was working here and I was able to get some interviews and kind of work through that process. But back then I was young and excited and energetic. I'm still very energetic about all things, but especially back then. And just really was super thrilled. I interviewed with a number of companies, but really was very happy to choose Adobe. And like I said, I've been here a very long time. So that's kind of the short answer. But
Oh,
I
we
would
have to
say,
go into the longer answer. We
great,
have to go into
great,
your background, what you studied
great.
in college, what you've been doing. So feel free to expand.
Awesome, awesome. All right, we'll go back a little farther than that. So I've always wanted to do computers. Like I've thought about computers when I was young. I had an Apple IIe growing up, and I would be hacking around on that and playing different games and did a lot of some super fun stuff with my IIe. We had it in our house in the living room, which my parents didn't actually like. They're like, "Why is the computer in the living room?" Then I finally did move it to my bedroom, but way back in the day, it was in the living room. So like, we're trying to have a dinner party. Why do you have this thing here? So that was kind of funny. Um, but yeah, just was always interested, like curious was kind of my background, like really just curious in how computers worked and oh, we've got to get the printer working. How does it plug in? How does this little rolly thing work? What's the paper? It had like perforated sides, that whole the way printers used to be, dot matrix printers back in the day. But then when I went to high school, it was like the Mac Classic. The Macs had just come out, kind of that 1984 era of like, hey, this is a mouse, and now you can move the cursor around the screen. So really excited about that. Did some desktop publishing when I was in high school, so was on the newspaper staff, and we started doing everything, laying it out by hand. And then we started using Quark Express, was the program back in the day to lay out the actual paper. So that was fun. I did a lot of that really in the early days. We had a really bad network. Back then, networking was, there was no protection or security back then. It was just plug in a bunch of cables and everybody could talk to everybody. So that was interesting. And then, yeah, I went to college for computer science. So both undergrad and grad school really had chosen that field early on and stayed with it for kind of 6 years. And then, like I said, interviewed at Adobe. So really excited to stay through computer science. Kind of always knew I was going to do it and was very happy that it worked out.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us about your role at Adobe.
Sure. So I'm currently what's called the Director of Application Security.
Mhm.
Not too worried about the title or anything, but what I basically think about was what are our developers doing to get products out the door, and how can we help them be more secure, but also be fast? A lot of the security is, putting in barriers or putting in blocking, controls or products or technologies to get in their way. And I'm really thinking about the intersection of how they can be productive, but also be secure. And a lot of the folks on my staff, we also do security guidance. So Spondita was here last time, and she kind of talked about her background and how we do threat modeling and working with the different product teams. So I have that function as well. And then we actually have a separate team doing what's called AI and DE. So AI, of course, and then data engineering. So we're really looking into that. Happy to talk about that in a little bit too, the details of that. But so kind of the different teams of like looking at source code, looking at some of the AI products, looking at the different products that the developers make, and then just doing it for the whole company. So recently, my job changed into security because I was in product for a long time before that. I get to look at all the products. So that's a much bigger lens than just being on one product. So it's very interesting, right? A web service is completely different than a mobile app, which is different than a desktop app. which is different than Mac and Windows and Linux. I mean, the complexity is kind of staggering actually, but it's super fun. Adobe has a product. Basically, if there's a technology that's out there, we're probably using it in Adobe somewhere. So it's pretty complex, but we do love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is amazing. Yeah, I can only imagine that aspect of things and looking at things from making sure that a particular product is interoperable, different operating systems, and all of that. What that goes and what all that goes into it as far as programming and coding and things like that. So, as you're aware, like these calls, these talks are really geared towards individuals that are looking to transition or all have had undergraduate degrees that are just trying to get them their foot in the door into the cybersecurity profession specifically. And I would just say, of course, you came out of college, you stayed with Adobe, but given the fact that you are a leader, what advice would you give someone starting out in this profession? What is
That's
the
great.
first thing that come to mind?
I'll say curiosity. That seems maybe a little bit trite or a little bit simple, but I think that's a big part of it. So if you're going to go into, we have a field called penetration testing or like web ethical hacking. That's certainly a big area. You have to be really curious because probably the first thing that's going to happen is it's not going to work out for you. Like initially, everything you're going to do is going to fail. So you really have to, have the confidence and kind of deterministic view of I'm going to make this thing work. But before even that, you have to be curious. Like, how does this work? What is the web? Where is that server located? What are the IP addresses? What technology is it running on? What is a vulnerability? There's all these kind of questions that you go through. So I will say curious. Curiosity is probably the big one. I'd also say that you want to pick a sub area because cybersecurity is so, and even information security, whatever word we want to use to kind of describe the whole field, it's so vast, right? There's just so many different choices. And then if you expand to all of computer science, it's even bigger. So while you do have to have a good breadth of understanding of kind of all of the things, I would actually advise people to pick kind of one area and go a little bit deeper so that you can, when you're interviewing or talking, especially at the beginning, uh, in that one specific domain. So it doesn't matter what it is, right? Reverse engineering, binary analysis, penetration testing, any of these kind of different fields, but kind of go a little bit deeper, right? Like, oh, I'm going to go code something. Well, that's great. And everybody should code something, but I want to code something that actually has some depth to it and actually serves a purpose, right? So maybe I'm doing a capture the flag and there's a simple question that you can get with maybe 10 or 15 lines of code. Then after that's done, maybe make it better, make it more robust, make it thicker, have it add some other additional functionality. Go put it on a GitHub page so that other people can comment on it, right? Like get out there in the community and kind of broaden your own kind of singular view of something. Because I think that's a big part of it too. We'll get to community maybe a little bit later, but I think just not your own little kind of narrow view of things. So
Oh, that's definitely important. And of course, we do have an apprenticeship program on the MiC talent side, and I tell them all the time in regards to they'll come to me, oh, Miss Mary, I want to be a penetration tester. And I said, well, you actually got to kind of know how to defend a network before you actually can penetrate the network itself,
right,
right?
right,
And
right.
so there's some foundational elements that we talk about and we go through within our apprenticeship program that I think the information security community, because okay, I can remember when it was information assurance, and we've talked about that before. But the information security community itself doesn't really do itself a good job in explaining the breadth of what you need to understand, regardless of how you want to dig deeper into all of the things that could be, they can rely, fall into this spectrum, whether it be, coding, like you talked about, or whether it be, privacy, right? Or product, you talked about that a little bit. So it is just so vast. It is getting IoT and OT and all of these things that are out there. But I often just say, understand that we're all trying to do the same things, and the basics usually never change, right? It's still, it's
Yeah,
still
yeah. I'll definitely say
It's
that, you have to understand the networking stack before you can start, not that we need to have an OSI discussion here, but there's all these different layers and, you have to have an understanding, not like you need to go build a chip, although some people now with Raspberry Pi and other things and circuits and stuff, I never really got into any of the circuit stuff myself, but from a basic architecture class, you have to understand how that's working. So much of our stuff is kind of at layer 7, oh, I want to be an app
Mhm.
developer and build a website, or that's all great, right? But you have to have an understanding of what the compiler is doing or what the operating system is doing or what the network is doing before you can do anything kind of cool above it.
Mhm.
So that point is absolutely dead on. I will say one more thing, you triggered something in my mind, which is awesome. I love the whole concept, and this is not my idea, right? SANS instructors and other people talk about this in the cybersecurity industry all the time. Building a home network is fantastic, right?
Mhm.
So get a big NAS drive, spin up a couple virtual machines, set up your own little network inside your house. Don't just get the router that you get from your ISP. Go buy your own router, do some networking behind it. Like these are the very small, low barrier to entry things that you can do to get into the field. And then, it's like, okay, today I'm going to look at how these computers are talking to each other. Okay, that's my networking day. All right, put that away for a while. Now I'm going to go code something. Okay, now I'm going to code something. But um, a lot of this stuff is not that expensive. I think people think, oh, it's this crazy expense. I've got to spend thousands of dollars to buy really expensive classes or a bunch of hardware. You can do this, a lot of the stuff with, $40 Raspberry Pis, as long as you plug them in
Mhm.
right. Like it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
So once again, that curiosity and just starting to play around with things and then having some of that experience. And then when you go interview, that's wonderful stories to tell, just like we're doing now. Oh
Mhm.
yeah, I have a home network and I played around with this. And just even that curiosity will come out in your way you deliver yourself. I think it's super important. That's how I feel. Like if I'm interviewing someone and they have kind of that passion about something, that's going to show through on the conversation. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I joke with the team and the students that well, they are students technically, but and the leaders that you should see my home network because I'm a networking now. I can do some programming. I have an information systems degree, so I have some computer science background as well. But and I will do some coding on my website and JavaScript and all this other stuff. But I am really a networking type of person, and when I describe what's going on in my house, it's like, well, the security network is subnetted off. My office is buried off. The gym equipment is somewhere different, and
that's
then there's a
great.
general network. So you can never get away from it. I mean, I don't, from a functional perspective, even in going in corporate, I didn't have to do it from a hands-on perspective, but it does. It's something that you never lose the ability to do.
That's right. I have kids who are kind of in the, high school and college age right now, and we're talking about it all the time, right? Everyone's got a phone now, so everyone's doing things on their phone, right, with an app. I was like, okay, let's code something, or let's go figure out how this is working, or what are all those settings actually doing? Like, what does it mean to turn on this Apple, privacy tracking? I don't know. Let's go Google that. Like, what is that? This sounds exciting, but I don't know what that is. So like you said, you mentioned privacy and some other, maybe I don't want to say non-technical. There's certainly technical fields, but maybe not coding. That curiosity applies to that as well, right? We have tons of jobs in, either in privacy or in law or in compliance or all of that, and you have to still have kind of that understanding of how computers work, but it's more the human side, right? So if you enjoy
Mm-hmm.
working with people and talking to customers and working through what they want versus maybe what the company has to offer and bridging that gap, that's a whole fascinating thing that I never thought about until probably 2 or 3 years ago when I moved from product over to security. I didn't really know that that whole area existed, right? But that's this
Yeah,
huge
right.
field, right? And so
Right.
when people talk about technology, it's like that word can mean so many different things. And it's okay, right? It's so big. Let it just happen, right? It is big
Mm-hmm.
and, maybe scary on some hands, but that's a good thing, right? That just means there's a bigger pool. More people are needed in these fields. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I just we have other sessions, and this past Tuesday it's called Mic Drop that we talk about different things. It's usually an open forum. We prepping for interviews and things like that. But
mhm.
someone, as always, asked the question about AI and whether AI is going to take on cybersecurity jobs, and I must once again must reassure them that no, 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 no. AI is really just a program, and there are people behind that program that need to be able to monitor the program to make sure it's effectively working in the way that it's intended. I said there are so many other things that spin off of that. So, as we start to talk about, and we talk to the individuals about what it is that they should, go into. What are you seeing out there beyond, within the space and within the cybersecurity space? Any guidance that you would like to give the folks out there listening on different career paths or new things that you're coming across that, they may not even be thinking about?
Yeah, I hate to say AI because everyone's going to say it. So I'm going to start there, but I'm going to give a B answer as well. That's the easy answer. It is true in 2024 that you have to have some understanding of AI. And so people ask, like, oh, what does that mean? Like, is it a chat bot that's coding with me? Okay, maybe, right? Copilot or some other technology. More importantly, you can use it to help you make a PowerPoint deck, or you can use it to help your creative. Adobe has a bunch of products that have AI integrated into now, but there's also, with Firefly and a couple other things, I'm going to get into an Adobe brand thing here. It doesn't matter, it's Adobe, it can be something else. But the idea is you do have to be understanding of what that is. So like this, we talked about networks before. I think people have to understand how networks are in order to do kind of the higher levels. I think it's the same thing with AI, and that really has changed in probably the last 2 to 3 years. Yeah, I'm not going to say if your words AI don't show up on a resume, I'm going to throw it in the trash. But let's just say that it will really help you if the words AI are on there. But once again, it doesn't have to be I'm going to go get a minor in AI or go get a data science degree. It's not necessarily that, but just using the tools that we have out there. So can you tell a story of how you used AI in one of your projects, right? Maybe you're in school and you're doing something for school, presentation, whatever. How did you use AI to help you? And what was the conversation back and forth? How did it fail you, right? It's not perfect. We're very, very in the early stages of it. So having that conversation, maybe that's part of the presentation too. So, okay, that's the easy answer, AI. Um, I do kind of go back to coding a little bit. I will say that at least a fundamental understanding of either a scripting language, bash scripts, or some sort of how I can get an automated, I'll say maybe automation more than coding, but some task that you want to do repetitive over and over, even a simple cron job or something, right? On whatever it is. I do still think that that's important to have some understanding of that, because we do still, like you said, who's writing the code that fuels all the AI? Someone's got to write that. Who's protecting it, right? Someone's got to protect it. Someone has to be doing penetration testing against the AI. So all of the things that are non-AI apply to AI too. But I will say coding would be my B answer after AI. A little bit of coding, even if
Okay, but Jeff, does that as a function of where you work though, right?
sure, yeah, I guess I'll give you that. But like
Your
even if
a
we
product company that,
sure, sure,
it's important that coding aspect, but a bank, right? I mean, depending upon what the functional role of that person is, because
sure,
try to get people out of the thought process that you actually have to know coding to be in cybersecurity, right? And
sure,
I tell individuals that because it's so vast, right?
yeah,
And so in different industries look at it in a different purview depending on what they're looking for, right? And so if you as a manager, as a hiring manager, are looking for those skills, just ultimately because that's the function of the business,
right.
right? Is that fair? Is that fair?
I think so. I'll meet you 80%, maybe not
Okay, okay.
100%, but I'll give you 80%. I do have that bias, right? We are engineers inside the security function, and we have a lot of engineers at Adobe. So you're talking to a lot of engineers. But let's use the banking example, right? If you're whatever bank, you're still probably having some discussions around how the network is protected or how the application is working. And so at some layer, you're probably looking at some code, or you have someone in your team who's looking at your code, and you have to understand what is the business risk now of that. So I give you 80%. 80% with that answer.
Me and you can we can talk about, I ran the SOC, right? I ran the Security Operations Center, and
Yeah.
I've been in incident response. So I'm on the other side, right? I'm on
Yep. Yep.
the straight defending
Yep.
network, and that side of it. So it's hardware, it's IDS, it's IPS, so it's just a different hat, right?
Yep.
And so that is just the broad differences between what's available to an individual within this particular profession, and all the different avenues that you can chase down depending upon what your love is, and what you figured out. What, like you pointed out, you hire for passion. I used to hire for passion as well. As it's essentially being able to find your niche and then dig in, right? And become a subject matter expert in whatever it is that you love to do, right? Because we have individuals that are on the GRC side. I'm a lawyer as well. I'm an IT geek, but I'm also an attorney. So again, it plays in my head differently, because of I've been an FBI agent, I've been a lawyer, I've been on the SOC. So all these different things are what's playing in my head when we talk about information security, cybersecurity. So I'm sure we can go back and forth on that for about an hour, but we won't. We will move on, Jeff, and we will talk about, as far as, of course, we're talking to newer professionals, right? And beyond curiosity, which you touched upon earlier. What is the big the how I say what is the as it relates to your own personal journey, what is the most useful tool in your arsenal when it comes to building out a career in this space?
Yeah, that's good. That's a great question. I think it's a little bit trickier when you're early on, but it still makes a lot of sense. You want to be networking. And now I'm going to use the other networking word, not networking in that I'm building a home network and it's packets and IPS and IDS and IP6, all that stuff. I'm talking about like networking isn't talking to other people, right? Does your college campus or community have a B-sides, or do they have a computer club? Are you talking with other people? Are you networking in that sense, right? The human to human communication, because the other aspect of the technical side is actually the communication side, right? So being able to describe business risk, being able to describe what you're doing in your project, being able to communicate through PowerPoint or Zoom calls, right? Ever since COVID, we're all on all these calls all the time like this. Like these are just tools, but I would say communication and networking are really, really important. And that really does start at the beginning. So many people think, oh, I'm just gonna magically via osmosis have that. No, you've got to practice it, just like you practice coding, right? So talking to people, giving present. Oh, I don't want to give a presentation. We'll let somebody else in my little team do that. And that's kind of important, right? So I would say that that's a big part of it. It's really interesting to see the people who do that well versus the people that don't do that well. And I don't want to say like you can't get a job if you don't do it well, but there's a huge kind of separation factor with that. And that'll come across even in your kind of first interview uh, throughout the rest of your career. So, kind of an easy answer again by saying just like, oh, be a better communicator. But I think there is something to that. I think there's something to that. So I'll tell you one
Oh,
more story.
absolutely.
So
Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, I have some folks that I used to manage and they were incredibly brilliant, right? We're talking like, Albert Einstein level, like ridiculous, super smart. And they were very good at their job, but they just kind of came in and did their job, right? They didn't want to talk to anybody else or do anything. They expressed everything that they did just through code, and then they would get on email or they would get on Zoom, and it just got kind of awkward, right? And that's tricky, right? That's tricky, right? We really do want people, especially at a company like Adobe, where our culture is, really one of our big selling points in addition to our technology. Being smart is awesome, but being able to communicate and being the person that you want to be around, and by the way, get on a customer call with, right? So we're all dealing with customers. Who's the customer and who are you going to invite to that call? So little bit of a tangent there, but I did want to slip that one in.
No, no, absolutely. Actually, foundationally, that's where minorities in cybersecurity exists. We're a leadership development
Mhm.
organization. We do some technical training through our apprenticeship program, but we're really focused in on the what others will call soft skills, what I would call corporate survival skills, and your
Mm.
ability to communicate is directly related to your ability for promotional opportunities. So we foundationally are that type of organization. And so those things are really, really, really important, as in the toolbox. And what I wanted to ask, as far as because when I say students, I don't mean like college students. I mean, individuals with professional experience in another
Mm,
area. Like we have individuals that are nurses in our apprenticeship
mm,
program. We have individuals that are real, former real estate agents. They're looking to transition
mm,
from another area into cybersecurity. So
mm,
this is a question for them in regards to what transferable skills when you're looking for an opportunity and you don't have the tech, you don't have the computer science or information security background that we both have, and you have a non-traditional background. What are the things that you would give them, or what are the advice would you give them to hone in on outside of what we just said, the easy one, which is their soft skills? What other skills can you give them to, or advise them on what they should point out as they're now looking for a role in cybersecurity?
Okay, tricky question. That is a deep one. All right. Don't have an
Okay, okay.
exact answer on that. I am going to say, it's a little bit of the curiosity, right? There's always things are changing, right? So you can't just say, okay, I'm going to read this book and I'm going to put that on my shelf and it's going to be in my brain and that's my 1992 self. And now I just have it, right? Now I know networking or I know this thing, right? It's always changing. So you do have to have that desire and practice, like you actually practice the art of learning new things. Like I think that's absolutely critical in a role like cybersecurity. Um, yeah, it's really interesting. People ask me sometimes, Jeff, you were in product for so long. Why, 20 years in product, why did you decide to be in cybersecurity? And my silly trite story is, I don't know if you've seen the movie Inception, but this is the way I tell it. I just went to sleep one day and I woke up and someone had put in my brain, oh, you should be in cybersecurity, Jeff. It's kind of a silly thing, but it's half true. The other half is I had been working with and talking with the cybersecurity people inside Adobe for years before that, right? I already had the intellectual curiosity to make the change.
Uh,
And so when I did it, they already kind of knew me. And so that's another thing I do want to leave with your folks is like the way to get that new position or that transfer of a thing that you're doing from A to B is to actually know what their problems are, what are they trying to solve, what are they hiring for, and can you bring that to the table? And maybe the non-traditional way of bringing something to the table is actually what they're looking for. Like maybe they're not looking for an expert coder, they're looking for someone who can translate business value. And you do that because you're incredibly good as a nurse talking to patients, or you've got a customer background and you're able to translate what the customer is saying to something technically. So probably in your toolbox, you have a lot of these other skills. And it's just kind of a question of, is it going to match at that time? So I give myself a 6 on that answer. You did trick me a little bit there, but I think go for it
No,
is, yeah,
I
yeah.
I didn't try to trick
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
It's just that, wanted to, because many, 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 many of the folks that are junior level, that, and I would
Right.
say the ones that are in the apprenticeship program, we have about 90 something folks in that program. I would say 80, 85% are transferring into the profession from something
Mm-hmm.
different.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, puts them, they're always concerned about how to articulate the non-technical aspects as it relates to maybe an entry level role, because you and I both know, as far as cybersecurity concerns, we don't really do a good job at um, expressing to individuals that are not technical how they can fit within the information security, cybersecurity
Right.
profession.
Right.
And so and a lot of times it does come down to, oh, I need to learn this language or that language, when in reality, there was no one really in my security operations center, or even in my security awareness team, or in my database security team, we spent a lot more time communicating with other teams in order to get something done. It wasn't as if they were going to let us code or do anything like that. And so it's trying to just give them an idea that there is a place for them and they are welcome in this space, and it's just a matter of hunting for the right organization and the right attempts when you're looking for that particular job opportunity. So That's all. I didn't mean to trick you. I'm
No,
sorry.
no, no. I should have even said I was just being fun. We're having fun here on Friday. It's great. I do want to say one more thing that you said is really, really great. So let's rewind a couple of years. I mean, AI kind of came out of the data science and machine learning and kind of had this history. But if you really think about, you know, I always say if it's cool enough to talk about it at dinner party, then you know the technology is kind of something, right? And so AI is that way, right? You can talk about AI at a dinner party and then with non-tech people. But that wasn't true probably 2, 3 years ago, right? Back when COVID and the years before that. So when we say, oh, I'm going to hire for this position, right? I'm going to hire someone who's in AI, or I'm going to hire someone who knows like cloud security, right? There wasn't cloud security before. Who were the people that we hired for cloud security? We hired people who just knew about networking, or we hired people who had just a basis and said there wasn't an expert, right? One of the funny stories one of the instructors told me once was, oh, I'm going to look at a resume. I've got 10 years of cloud security. Well, no, the cloud wasn't invented 10 years. How can you have 10 years of cloud security? Right? There's a new field called DevOps, right? DevSecOps and DevOps and all these other words. Those are new fields, right? But the background and the things that you have from other places are absolutely transferable to that. And because we have such a shortage of these folks, I still firmly believe that, right? Even with all the AI and the robots taking over and going to start coding for us, which is not going to happen, like you said, we still need people. Like these are people, and these are people who have just the curiosity and the desire to want to change their role. So it is a combination of passion, communication, a little bit of technical skills, but representing yourself well. Like I think, you can be shy, like that's okay. But when you're in an interview, like this is a chance to show who you are. So that's probably the one time you don't want to be, don't be like me right now. I'm kind of crazy, but like you want to be who you are and give some life because interviews are a tricky kind of one shot thing. And so you want to represent your best self. Okay, so that was a tangent. I did like 7 things, but I thought it was great.
It was great. It's great. It's just understanding, right? It like you said, it's the Friday before the holiday. It going into the end of the year. We could, talk whatever, and we're
Yeah.
good. I think we're good. If you guys have any questions, by the way, please put them in the chat or in the Q&A. If you're out there watching on YouTube, I am looking at the chat on there as well. So you said you spent 20 years in product. How long have you been on the security side, cybersecurity side?
It's coming up on 3 here in a couple months, so 2.5, 3.
Okay.
Yeah, so pretty
Okay.
short actually. Yeah, I came over
Okay.
initially, did something called incident response, not in kind of the SOC way that you did. It was more we called it PSERT, product security incident response. So did that for a little bit. I was on the team when Log4j came through, and so that was exciting, right? Everybody was like, "Wow, this is a new thing," and "Wow, we have that deployed everywhere," and "Wow, that's a really hard problem." And hey, guess what? It's right before Christmas break, so that's not great. But we worked through that, so that was super fun. But yeah, I'd say yeah, we're just coming up on 3 years. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
product security incident response. Yeah, that's pretty darn cool. Like when you think about it, right? When you have these 0 days, you have these
right,
vulnerabilities that exist and they're out there, and you're like, oh crap, now I have to go and revamp my entire software across all of these different platforms and things like that, just to patch, so to speak, the
right,
vulnerability or to get rid of it. That wow, that what, and I, of course, I've only been in Fortune 50 companies. I've never worked at a software company. I've worked at J&J and GE and Comcast and a small therapeutic firm. So I don't have we didn't have a product that we were selling type of thing, but that has to been pretty cool. Or no, pretty stressful. It's kind of like the call at on with Thanksgiving Eve, right? That there's an incident going on. There's something actively happening on your network. Yeah, that's that kind of fun. It's not fun. It's just me being sarcastic.
The good news is we have a pretty decent sized team, so it was happy for the smaller companies. I mean, that's a real problem, right? Like before it was Heartbleed. Heartbleed was this kind of open SSL kind of vulnerability, and there's a number of other ones that are like that, right? It's like if you have people that can go fix it, that's great. Like if you're a big enough company to do it, but what if you're a small company and now you have a vendor? Is the vendor going to patch? the vendor did patch, but now they want to charge you money. There's that whole thing of like, well, so you go on that for quite a while, but it was exciting. I will say it was exciting. It was stressful. Like nobody knew that one was coming until like a day or two. We all kind of got a hint that something was happening. We didn't know what it was. And then just to be honest with what it was, it's a very commonly used library, right? That is everywhere. Pretty much if you're doing anything in Java, you probably have log4j somewhere because you're logging something, right? It's kind of what everybody uses. So yeah, we can have a nice deep hour-long open source discussion if we want to take a pivot
You know
here.
what?
But
Hey, we can take 10 minutes, again, to talk about the open source discussion. No, I know, it's really intriguing, right? Just how many ways things can go awry. So when I'm talking to the apprentices, we talk about the NIST cybersecurity framework, right? And I really literally am teaching them that. And I talk, and when we go line by line, we are really within the detect, respond, recover piece. And so when we start going line by line, and I start to tell them how intricate the actual framework is and what you're supposed to be doing, I said, this is the blueprint of what you're actually supposed to do, and this is why companies don't do it because it's not easy. Right? It's not
yeah.
easy. And I hopefully I'm getting across to them just how many ways there are to actually mess something up. I mean,
Yeah, I mean the core, yeah. I think the other thing is like you think about what time of the year it is right now, right? This is the whole kind of, I guess, Black Friday is the way they call it, or
yeah,
Cyber
the
Monday.
target
There,
breach. Yeah,
yeah,
target
there's
breach
that.
happened around this
And
time.
then so you have a whole big discussion around, okay, I have the patch, but am I going to deploy it right now when we're in financial that those are like very important decisions, right? How do I
Mm-hmm.
patch? When do I do it? Are we in a restricted change kind of thing? So that was a
Yeah.
whole thing I hadn't even thought about until I came to security. And of course, I work at Adobe. I know we do a lot of stuff during you know, Cyber Monday and Black Friday and those things coming up here next week. But yeah, are you going to go deploy a thing right now? Not many people want to do that, right? So even if
Mm-mm,
it's,
no,
but
there was a blackout. There was no changes that were
yeah,
being made
yeah,
from this point until the early beginning of the year because we didn't want
right,
anything to go down or that from an availability perspective. And especially when you're customer facing and you depend upon those
totally.
type of things working. So it's like, no, we have blackout. Nope, we're not doing anything.
I love talking about that with the finance people. They're like, no, we're running, nobody runs checks anymore, but like we're doing the thing that gets the people paid. Like we're not touching that system right now because we need to generate the thing. I'm like, yeah, that's a really interesting discussion. Okay, we really need to do it because it's important. When can we do it next? Well, we can't do it until 4 more days. So yeah,
Right, right.
that's a fun one. But these are the discussions, right? So if you get excited about this, going back to, the passion and what happens, there aren't easy answers, and the answers are different for each company, right? So you have to understand what your business is doing, what its way that it makes money, and how that affects what the customers want and expect of you. And I mean, it's a triangle, but it's way more than that. It's like more like three-dimensional chess, right? You have to take into all these different cases, and lots of people have different opinions on how that should be. I find those conversations fascinating, and during Log4j, we had a lot of them. So that's the passion and excitement I think with your folks as they're transitioning is if you have that, it's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So 20 years in product, about 3 years in cybersecurity. Have you found your home or what are you looking at next? Or, how does the career trajectory works right now for you, Jeff?
Yeah, it's good insecurity. I think that the difference is when you're on a product, like I said before, you're kind of on one thing, you're doing one product, right? I was on Photoshop for a while, so I was doing Photoshop and we were moving Photoshop to the iPad. So that was, an expansion of the products. We had a bunch of cloud services that we need to interact with. So that was fun. It wasn't just Photoshop on the desktop. Uh, there's a lot of diversity when you say Photoshop, but that was it still was one product as opposed to all of the products, right? In my current role, I get to see all of the products, right? We have an entire separate business called DX and a whole separate business called Creative Cloud and a whole separate Acrobat. Like these are all major companies inside of our company. And so when you think about the complexity, I think it's great. So yeah, no, I'll be staying
Mhm.
in security for quite a while. It is very different than product though, right? The one thing I will say this, the one thing I miss a little bit is when you're in product, you're kind of shipping something. There's that moment of, hey, I shipped it. In security, we're delivering tools and delivering value. We're delivering things, but it's not quite the, I don't want to say endorphin, euphoric hit, but there's that kind of when you ship stuff, especially now where we ship much more frequently. Back when we used to press DVDs and stuff like that, right? We would ship less
Yeah.
frequently. But it's still fascinating. And so thinking about the broad spectrum of products and the broad Adobe is fascinating to me. But yeah, no, we'll stay out here for a while. Yeah.
No, I mean, honestly, there is no final to security, right?
Right.
Which is
Which is good and bad, right? It's good. You
and
have to
that's
accept it.
that's why I paint or I do other things that have a finality. There's a start, a middle, and an end, right? There is no end to cybersecurity. It's just okay. What's the next fire? What's the next problem? What's the next thing that we need to do, right? So that's the function of our profession, our chosen profession. But yeah,
Mhm.
that you have to find some finality somewhere else. Go build a birdhouse or something like that. And then get that euphoric feeling that you've completed something,
That's
right?
totally right. That's totally right. Yeah, I don't know if we get excited about oh the financials met or didn't met, no offense to all the finance people on the call, but it's different. Like, yeah, you're totally right. I do some music, so that to me is kind of a, oh, okay, I learned this piece, now I can play it, right? Okay, that's a final kind of thing. Yeah, that's a really great point, actually. There's no final insecurity.
Not never is. Haven't found the bottom of the well yet. Um,
Some
so
people call
you
that
said
job security, though. I do want to say the
yeah,
flip side of that. That's why
there we go. There we
yeah.
go. They always need you. So how many folks are you leading right now, Jeff?
I think 24, somewhere in there, 23,
Somewhere
24.
around there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Four
Yeah.
managers. Yeah. And then a team under them. So yeah. Yeah.
So how's the leadership journey for you, Jeff? I mean, I think the largest team I had was around that time, around that size as well. And so as a leader, what's your biggest challenge when leading folks? That's a good question.
Good. I love the conversation with managers who have teams that can then do the thing, right? So I used to love being the manager who did the thing or had the team that did the thing, but now I'm up that next level and you have managers who do the thing. And so it's a little bit more about guidance, a little bit more about strategy. I should admit this to the entire internet, but the strategy is not my favorite thing. So we're kind of working through that right now. But like any sort of skill, the more you do it, the more you're going to get better at it. So probably more of that is in my future as far as leadership journey. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, talking to my managers is great. Like they
Mhm.
have all great perspectives too. And then, I don't have to quite get into all the details of how the thing is
Mhm.
actually going to get done. It's more like a steer than a uh, direct. And we don't use words like that at Adobe Edit.
Mhm.
That's the wrong word. Direct is not, yeah. But have a conversation. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it's
but
it's it's allowing the creative process to happen, right?
yes,
No, never fashioning the how, just
right.
talking about, what we want to get done and giving them the leeway to find their own way, right?
Yes,
And guide them like, yeah, I wouldn't do it that way. However, I'm not telling you what to do, but it's this mentorship, I would say, and transitioning from into a people leader, because that's one of the courses that we have is our MiC lead communicators course, which is two steps above the aspires. It's more so just when it ceases to be about you as an individual contributor and then
right.
becomes about the entire team. That's a challenge that many people that are foundationally like to be on their own, and don't want to talk to people. it can be challenging for you when you are actually now responsible for a broader version, but now you have people under you and you're like, okay, let's go and let's do this. But yeah, I found that to be one of those things as I grew, into people leadership that I had to really work through and work on was the my ability to let be hands off, right, and just let that happen.
There's a couple of things around that I love. One is you have to sometimes let things fail. And so that's a little bit tricky, but as a leader, you learn more. Maybe famous people who write leadership management books talk about this all the time. I learn the most from my failures versus my success. There is something to that. Of course, we don't want to all go around and willingly fail constantly because then probably that's not going to work out great. But when you look back, either a root cause or whatever process you're using to look back on the thing that didn't work well, that's a big moment and very, very exciting. So if you get excited about the front end of, oh, here's this new problem, I'm going to go attack it. Also get excited about the back end, like this thing did or didn't work. Maybe it's a reliability concern or there was some outage because you put in a security patch or whatever it is, right? There's always that back half to the front end, which is really, really exciting. And then to to what you said about leaders, I think it's not only the like letting them fail, but also helping them through that transition. Because I think somewhere in that comment was a bunch of, if you're a senior tech person and you're thinking about going to first layer of management, that's probably the hardest transition.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've joked I'm never going to write a book, but if I ever were to write a book, that'd be chapter two. Chapter one would be, is it a regression? That's my fundamental question when anything new happens. Hey, did it happen because of the new thing that you just put in? But anyways, chapter two would be, do you want to be a people leader? Or here's how to be a people leader or something like that. There's definitely something to the comment you made there because some people are not great at it, and that's okay. Like, not everyone
Mm-hmm.
needs it. If everyone was leading and nobody was doing, we wouldn't get anything done. But you also don't need all doers and no leaders because then you don't have the direction to go in the right direction. So, yeah, that's a fascinating another hour conversation we could have. That's great.
No, I mean, and that's again why these programs exist, because that is a difficult thing to go from an individual contributor that knows the thing
Right,
to a people leader who's now relying upon people to execute more
right,
things, right?
right.
And if you don't really, as a technologist, rely on those or develop those soft skills or corporate survival skills, it's going to be difficult, because even when talking to the folks above you and providing information about the status or the quality of the program that you've developed, you need those presentation skills,
Right.
right? And a lot of times, I've run across individuals in my career that I just look at them like, you're a great technologist, but I wouldn't put you in front of the board. That's
That's right.
all.
That's right. Yep. This is why in a lot of the penetration classes and that you have to write that report. Like, can you write the report? Do you know how to take screenshots? Okay, that's great. But do you take the techno babble in that super long 25 character line that you just typed with all the command line kung fu, and now you can describe it to a layperson, right? Someone who's not a technology and describe to them how it affects the business. Wonderful, right? That's a huge,
That's
huge skill that's really, really important. And not everybody can do it. So that's great. Then we have different tracks for different people's careers for that reason. Yeah.
yeah,
That's really,
yeah.
really good.
That's exact. Those are facts. That's reality in regards to your ability to communicate, especially if you're looking to go into to people leadership. It's one of those most important skills, right? And I tell people, it's like, okay, well, you have to be able to articulate intelligently but simply, because surprisingly, the higher you go up in regards to who you're communicating, the less technical you actually need to be into describing what you're doing.
It's totally true. I'm going to back you up on that one. That is absolutely true. And it's usually for a reason that you might not think. It's not that they're dumber or they don't have the tech. Like, they were probably incredibly good at tech. They're so busy with all the 500 things, right? You're one of their 500 things they're thinking about. So you've got to kind of get in and get out, right? And the other thing I really do want to take a quick point on, prioritization or options. is a very big part of it as well. So if you're a person that can look at a problem and say, okay, here's three options, I'm going to, I like option one, but maybe they're going to choose option two or three. That's really, really important. Can you take a really hard, gnarly, technical mumbo jumbo thing and distill it down to, okay, here are the three things we can do. And maybe there'll be a fourth or whatever that someone comes up with in the conversation. That's fine, but don't worry about that. Like pick your top three. You want to go with one, present the other two, right? That's showing that you understand the problem, you can articulate the problem, and you're making a recommendation, right? So one of the other things that leaders don't generally like is, oh, you're just bringing a problem. I think it was Barack Obama
Right.
who said something super famously about, anyone who brings me a problem, they can't solve it. Like every problem I have is impossible. Or there's some quote that is on the internet better than I'm telling it now. But
Hmm.
the higher you go, that's what it is, right? So make sure that you get the thing, understand what the different options are, and then articulate that. And you will go very, very far in that. Some of the
Hmm.
folks that, launch higher up through their career can do that very, very well. That's a great one.
Hmm. Yep, 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 yep. So, oh, wait a minute. We have one on the chat in the YouTube. It says, "How do you inspire or foster collaborative behavior, or how do you let go when you are used to being independent?"
Good question. I'm going to say practice, which once again sounds easy, but in order to get better at the thing, you should do the thing more. So, one of our examples at Adobe is we were a box software, right? We shipped every 18 months. You put it in a box, you would put it on a retail shelf, and you would buy Photoshop or Illustrator or whatever. That had this sort of cycle of up, down, you're working really hard and then you had a little bit of a downtime and you work hard again. Well, then when we transitioned to subscriptions, it was more constant value, right? Constant updates to, maybe it's monthly, whatever we landed on. That was a huge change, right? So you think about all the conversations that you need to make that change from A to B. And nobody had done that before, right? So that it's a wonderful way to think about it. But okay, go back to the question. I went off for a second. Tell me it one more time.
How do you inspire or
Oh, okay,
foster collaborative behavior?
that's right.
Or how do you let go when you are used to being independent? So let's
Yeah,
take the first half. How do you
yeah,
inspire or foster collaborative behavior amongst your teams?
yeah.
What's your go-to? How do you do that?
So we have very a lot of examples of this. So whether it's a garage week, that's kind of a point in time where we get teams together, maybe who are not on the same team, and we put them together and say, hey, go work on this problem together. And you guys get to choose it, right? We give kind of that Google called it 20% time, or you have a little bit of free time to go try something else. So that's one thing. And I really would encourage you to do that with folks that are outside of your immediate trusted circle. You're going to get a much broader perspective from whatever it is the thing you're doing. So yeah, practice is the answer. And if you're not good at it, doing it more is how you get better at it. That was sort of my story about subscription. I kind of went off there a little bit, but practice is the answer.
Yeah, and it's you're not gonna always be comfortable.
Right.
Right. And so it is at those moments that you're uncomfortable that you can grow. And
Yep.
if you shy away from the things that make you uncomfortable, you're not growing.
Yep.
That's essentially, I can drop the mic on that. as
I
far
think you can.
as
Yeah.
far
Yeah.
you
And
can't, you
some
have
people
to
aren't.
be
Like
able.
some people
Yeah.
can't do it, right? And that is okay. Like there are positions where you can just do the thing incredibly well and your communication is not in a meeting or in a big presentation of the board. That's fine. We do need certain people like that, but generally you want to have a tool chest that has a wider amount of things in it that you can go to
Mhm.
in your career. Yep.
Yeah, and I tell people all the time, even when how are you going to communicate, even if you are an individual contributor and you're super highly technical and this is what you want to do, how do you communicate your effectiveness when you start to ask for that raise at the end
That's
of the year?
brilliant. Yep.
Man, we might want to practice our communication skills in order to tell Jeff exactly why he needs to give us that extra 2.5% raise. I mean, if you don't practice, if you don't learn it, then you're going to find it very difficult to even be a an advocate for yourself in
Absolutely
those
true.
situations.
And that should not be a once a year or once
Hmm.
whenever it comes up conversation. So the other advice I'll give there is yes, have those conversations with your direct boss or the appropriate person, but do it more frequently than you think you need to. uh, Turn that dial to more frequent because you'll get more real-time feedback and it'll help you in your career as well. So if it's, at that point in time, then maybe either the decision's already been made or I don't want to say it's too late because it'll just go to next year. But if you're having those conversations more as an ongoing basis, it'll work out better for you. Hands down.
Yep.
That's great. Yeah.
Yep. I agree with you 100%. And can you believe it? We only have 5 minutes to go. So, any other questions out there before I ask Jeff for his last words? It's been a great conversation.
Love it.
I was told that I have to wait like 30 seconds before all of these super highly introverted people actually put a question in. But I'm one that I don't like spaces and voids.
Yeah. We could ask what our favorite tech movie is. I don't know, or some other random comment for 30 seconds.
But
What do you got as far as random off the cuff favorite
um, uh,
coffee? I don't know. Like
I don't drink coffee. I will give you random. I've been they used to been on my drinking Red Bull, one Red Bull a day, probably since I joined the FBI. And I used to they used to make fun of me, okay, so FBI raids happen at 5 o'clock in the morning, and so that means you have to get out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning to be
okay.
on site at least. And so I remember, the guys on my team and whatever would, make sure I had my Red Bull.
That's
Even to
great.
this day, you come to the MiC conference in March, the guy will come up to me every morning and like, you have your Red Bull today, and he'll have a Red Bull for me. So that's my favorite drink right there. My Red Bull. I have to have one a day. If I have to have two, it's a bad day.
That's great. I'm on
What
Diet Mountain
about
Dew.
yourself?
I'd be Diet
Diet
Mountain
Mountain
Dew.
Dew?
So Diet Mountain Dew. Yeah, that's my one a day. Yep. I think
All
really
right,
good.
let's see. Okay, yeah, that is not for this particular meeting. The apprenticeship program applications, if you're out there wondering, open in January 1st. So if you're looking to join the apprenticeship program, that's when they'll open. So be mindful of that. And they're only open in January and July and only for 15 days. So that's where you have it. So I'll answer that question since it was a filler answer. But I want to thank you, Jeff, for joining us on the mic today. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your guidance and wisdom. And it's been a wonderful conversation. And hopefully you'll come back again, and we can have some dive deep into the other randomness that we can dive deep into that we talked about today.
That's
But
fantastic.
every but everyone, thank you so much for joining us this year. This is our last call for the year. Yeah, I tend to, you know, disappear in December because we run so much content during the week, but we'll be back. Um, if you and I would love for you guys to have a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving holiday and holiday season. And we will see you again on the mic with the Mike Lead Expire session and sometime in 2025.
Thank
Thanks
you so
again,
much. This is
everybody.
wonderful. I appreciate it.
All
Thanks
right.
for having me.
All right. Thanks for joining, Jeff.
Yeah.
Okay.